Hello boys, hope you're safe, hope you're doing well. My name is Nalo, and today's video is going to be over the winter sale and sort of the winter era of CSGO investing and how this year is going to do for CSGO investments as a whole. Also real quick, 33% of you guys are real homies, but 66% of you guys are actually not subscribed to the channel, so make sure you go and check that you are subscribed to the channel so that you can get all of the recent notifications for videos right straight to your inbox, and it can be very easy for you to access all of this investing content because a lot of this happens really fast, and so a lot of this information is really fast, which means that you are going to want to be as quick as possible in order to get the most amount of profit. Also, come on guys, what is this? We need more so let's get straight into this video after a quick word from our sponsor. The sponsor for today's video is vloot.io. It's actually owned by my manager, which means I can vouch for all of the giveaways being legit. That's a really huge deal when it comes to giveaways, of course, and they're always going to have a lot of really awesome giveaways available on the site, so if you want to go ahead and check them out, there's a link in the description below. If you want to go ahead and check them out, it's obviously a big no-brainer because all of the giveaways are free to enter, so it's just a great way to go and kind of enter that on the side and maybe gain a few extra skins for your inventory to grow in value. So if you're looking for a really short term, like basically putting nothing in and getting a lot out, this is going to be a great option for you. Everything's free. Go ahead and check out that link in the description below, and let's get into this video. Alright, so sorry for that long intro, but hopefully the cinematic made up for it. The way this video is going to be structured is I'm going to go ahead and show you a really cool skin that I think is a great idea to invest into for the winter area, and then I'm going to talk about sort of why it's a good investment and give you guys a few reasons why, and I'm going to give you an overall rating on a few different factors on why the investment is good. That way the rating can kind of tell you kind of like how it fares against other things in this list, and that's how we're going to do this. Also, it's not really in any specific order since all of these are diverse items, so that being said, don't really worry too much about the order itself. Alright boys, the number 5 spot on this list is going to go to cases, and specifically the Shadow, Breakout, Hydra, and Shadow Web cases. This is because cases are always going to be a pretty solid bet for investments as they do kind of get rarer over time and do increase value just because of the scarcity always going up. So the cases are going to have kind of a low demand, but they do have a pretty high sellability. So they do sell very easily, but they don't have too high of a natural demand. People don't like go out of their way to get cases since they are so high in quantity and so readily available on different marketplaces. So they don't really have like a huge demand, but they do have a very high sellability because they are, pretty easy and fast to sell in high quantities, especially if you have like an extension. And the next part of cases is also going to be their cost effectiveness, which is going to easily be a 10. These are super cheap or more expensive if you want to get a more expensive one, and they do pretty much push out profit no matter what price you buy them at and whatever cases you buy. So that's kind of a good reason for their cost effectiveness being really high. Their potential profit is also going to be up at like a 7. I put it at a 7 on my list because I do think that the potential profit of cases is usually going to be pretty solid. It's not anything crazy, but it's just pretty solid potential profit. So it's going to be cases. As an average for cases, it's going to come out to a 6.75, so about a 7 overall for cases. They're just going to be kind of that middle ground, pretty cheap, very cost-effective item that is going to pretty much always give you a solid amount of profit. Even if they don't spike up exactly around Christmas, they are going to at least spike later in the year as they will get more scarce, so they're always going to be a pretty solid bet. Moving on to the number 4 spot on this list, it's going to go to the OG Butterfly Knives and the OG Karambits. So this is specifically the Karambits and Butterfly Knives that come from the older original releases. So for example, the Breakout case and the older cases for the Karambit, like the Phoenix case for example. These ones are going to be a better option than the newer ones because they are more scarce and in higher rarity. And they're also harder to obtain because the cases are more expensive. So the demand for these are going to be around an 8. They're very high demand items. They are, pretty high demand in terms of high tier items. High tier items obviously have a natural amount of time that it takes to sell them just because they're so expensive, but in terms of selling time for high tier items, these ones are going to be a lot faster. Now as for the cost effectiveness, it's going to be low. I put it at a 2 because obviously these are very expensive items, so you are taking an automatic risk just because of how expensive these items are naturally. The main reason they're here on this list is because I like to make my lists diverse, so I want to give the higher tier investors that want like one big solid item, I want to give them an option. So the cost effectiveness is going to be low for these, but that's because they're so expensive. So moving on to the potential profits, I think it's going to be about an 8. The Butterflies and the Karambits, the old ones, have been doing phenomenally over the past couple years here, and especially the past couple months. The Karambit Fade that I've owned for a while now has just risen like crazy, and it's really just given me a lot of solid profits, even during the downturn and stale market that we saw recently. So I think they do have a pretty solid potential profits. As for the sellability, definitely up there around a 7, just because the demand is already automatically high. The sellability is also going to be high high because these items are going to sell pretty easily. You're going to be able to find a buyer pretty easily. Doesn't mean you're going to be able to sell them fast, but you are going to find buyers very easy for these items. As for the overall rating, that comes out to a 6.25 average, but that's because the cost effectiveness is dragging down the rating so crazy, and that's only because the items are really expensive, so that's not really countable. I would say it's more like a 7, really, if you don't really count cost effectiveness, just because the item is naturally expensive. Now, the number 3 spot for this list is going to go to AWP Asiimovs, but as a whole, AWPs have been doing really good recently, especially because our last covert AWP was in the AWP Wildfire, which was a little while ago, so we haven't really had anything crazy for AWPs in terms of recent releases, which means that they are, of course, going to be a bit more scarce than items like the AKs or the Desert Eagles as a whole, just because those have had recent covert releases. So AWPs in general are a good bet. I am saying AWP Asiimovs specifically because I think those are going to be the best bet, but a lot of AWPs like the AWP Lightning Strike have been performing really well. But in terms of winter, again, I do think the AWP Asiimovs are going to be the best bet. As for demand, I'm definitely going to put this way up there, up at about a 9, just because they aren't as desirable as some of the really crazy liquid items, but they are very desirable and a lot of people go for them. And in terms of cost effectiveness, it's going to be a 7. These items are still pretty high cost effectiveness because they are actually not super expensive. Even the field tested ones are still quite a bit under the $100 mark, so I do think that they have pretty good cost effectiveness. Now, potential profit is where this kind of sees a little bit of a lack in rating. I put it at a 5. The reason for that is because potential profit on these items is going to be a bit lower. The margins are a bit lower just because these are so high demand. They trade so frequently. These are not a flip item, which we're going to be talking about in a second, but they are an item that you're not going to see as much potential profit on, but they are going to be a lot more safe and they are going to hold their value a lot better. So if you're looking to make sure you don't lose any money, these are going to be probably your best bets. Turning on it to sellability, there's going to be a really solid 9 rating for AWP Asiimovs. These sell all the time, very frequently. It's very easy to find a buyer. You can easily sell it within an hour of the trade hold being up on these. So definitely a very fast item to sell. An overall rating for the AWP Asiimov is going to come out to a 7.5, so a very solid rating and definitely going to be a great spot for those of you that are looking to make sure you don't lose any money. Alrighty boys, moving on to the number 2 spot for this list, we're going to be talking about flips. So I did mention a little bit ago that flips were going to be on this list. So a flip is going to be an item that isn't exactly an investment. You're not holding it like in sort of a long-term area. You're holding it for a specific event in order to flip the item for profit. So the reason I put this on the list is because, yes, even though it's not really an investment, it is an item that you want to make sure you are buying into because these are going to pretty much always be guaranteed profit coming into the winter season. So that's going to be AK-47 Redlines, specifically AK-47 Redlines in field tested condition. Those are the ones that I rated. So the Redline flips are a very popular thing to do come Christmas time because they are such a popular item and such a solid liquid item that they are going to just sell super fast, and you can flip them for profit by taking the current market downturn that we're in and buying them at a lower price on the dip and then selling them at the higher price of a flip when we get around to January. About the early January is when a lot of these start selling and a lot of these start to see an uptrend. So if you look at the graph of AK-47 Redlines, every single time they've seen a bump in their price, it's always been around January, and specifically in early January when these items are going to be selling at the fastest rate. They have a lot of quantity sold, especially around like January 3rd, and that's going to be pretty much the best time to sell these off, and that's going to be when you are making your nice little bump of profit. So the margins on these are going to be not super great. They're going to be around 50 cents to $1.50 for every single AK Redline, but it is pretty much going to be guaranteed, as every single December that we've seen in the past has always shown an uptrend for AK-47 Redlines if you look at the graph. So they're a very safe, very solid item that is pretty much always going to do well, and especially with the popularity of CSGO as of recent, I think this December is going to be specifically very potent, so we could even see up to a $2 profit margin on every single AK Redline. Alright guys, on to ratings. So demand for AK-47 Redlines, obviously a 10. AK Redlines are the most liquid item in CSGO right now, so clearly they deserve a 10. Moving on to cost effectiveness, I gave it an 8 because I think that these are still pretty cheap and a lot of people can access them at the price they're currently at, so they do have a pretty good cost effectiveness, pretty cheap item as a whole. Moving on to potential profit, I gave it a question mark or like a 10 because these are pretty much guaranteed profits. If these don't actually move up as much as expected, it's going to be an anomaly in the market, something that we've never seen before. So I do pretty much say that they do have a guaranteed profits. I don't like to guarantee anything. I don't like to say anything is 100% safe because nothing is really 100% safe. But I do think that based on the market trends, this is probably the safest flip that you can possibly make around Christmas time. Moving on to sellability, it's going to be a 9. Obviously, with high demand comes high saleability, so these are going to be a very easy, very fast item to sell, and you're going to probably want to do it on the CSGO community market, as that's where the uptrend really happens the fastest and the most. The winter rating for this item is going to be a 9.25 if you include the extra 10 from the potential profit area, but if you don't want to include that and you want to just take that out of the equation as a whole and leave it as a question mark, then the rating comes down to a 9. So that's going to be the rating for the AK-47 Redline. Let's move on to the number 1 spot. And the number 1 spot for this list is going to go to something a little bit weird, and that's going to be Cato 15 items. So I think Cato 15 items are going to be your best bets, but obviously a lot of these items are good for their own reasons. The reason I recommend Cato 15 items so heavily right now is because they are gaining a lot of demand. People are very interested in stickered items specifically, as they are going to be sort of seen as these very high tier, very nice looking items. And so stickered items are getting a lot of demand as of recent. I put the demand rating for these at a 7 because of how fast the demand is growing. I don't actually think that like the current rate is a 7, but I do think that it's going to grow to around a 7 around December, just because of all the people with more money looking to invest. Moving on to cost effectiveness, I put that at a question mark because these range in value like crazy. You can buy super cheap Cato 15 items or super expensive Cato 15 items, so it kind of just depends what you're looking for. So cost effectiveness I just put as an overall question mark. Moving on to potential profit, these are going to be an 8 for potential profit, and that's because you can either make a huge amount of money or just a little bit of money, but I do think that the market for these is always going to be uptrending, especially after we've already recovered from this recent crash and manipulation that we had earlier in the year. Moving on to sellability, we got a 4 because these do sell pretty slow as they are stickered items, but I do think that the sellability of these items is going to rise along with the demand around Christmas time. So I do think these are going to be the best item overall to invest into for the most amount of profit. That's pretty much going to be, unique and kind of in a market that not a lot of people are looking to. Now the overall rating for this comes out to a 6.3, but the reason for that is because these are a niche item that not a lot of people are going to be investing into, which means that you can kind of capitalize on a less saturated market because these are going to be a bit of a less invested item just because they're not as known. So overall, compared to like an AK-47 Redline or a case, these are going to be a safer bet in terms of how niche the item is. On top of that, these also have sort of an increasing demand and an increasing sellability, so it's kind of hard to exactly track what the exact numbers are. The numbers that I gave are sort of just tentative, but they are increasing over time, so that's kind of why I put it at the number 1 spot. Alright boys, done with this video. Thank you so much for checking it out. I hope you enjoyed the cinematic thing that I made at the beginning of this. If you are interested in checking out VLoot, be sure to do that using the link in the description below, and be sure to also subscribe to the channel for all the latest and greatest investment tips. I'm officially fixing my schedule now, and that's not any sort of lie. I'm going to just be very, very contingent on having a good schedule for uploading videos now, because it will increase my channel growth, so might as well take the opportunity to do so. Also, I'm going to be releasing a guide to investing, sort of from the basics to the most advanced stuff, because I do want to make sort of a good free guide out there for anybody who's looking to get into investing in 2020 for CSGO, since a lot of it can be pretty overwhelming. So that's going to be happening pretty soon. Be sure to watch out for that. Also have a new series coming out pretty soon that's going to be pretty cool as well, so also be sure to watch that. And yeah, overall, thanks for the support. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you can get that subscribe number up. And if you're a female, also be sure to subscribe to the channel and watch the videos so that that female rate can go up and I don't just have 100% men watching my videos. I need a girlfriend. Anyway, thanks for watching once again. I will see you all next time. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Peace. Actually, you should like the video overall just because you made it all the way to the end here, and you even heard me rant about females. So, like the video. If you made it this far, you obviously liked it. Like the video. Alright, peace.